Boundary 4, God requires 2 or more witnesses to condemn a person to death. Deuteronomy 17:6, at the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall he that is worthy of death be put to death. But at the mouth of 1 witness he shall not be put to death. Based on this scripture, we would be required to find at least 2 clear New Testament scriptures clearly requiring that we die if we are not healed after being anointed. A scripture describing that God has provided for healing through the laying on of hands is not the same as a scripture requiring a person to be put to death and cannot count as one of the required 2 or more scriptures or witnesses. When God required Abraham to offer his son as a sacrifice, he did not send him a message about healing and long life. He gave the order with no uncertainty or ambiguity or as part of any other subject matter. And if God intended for multitudes to lay down their lives as sacrifices to divine healing, he would have made it equally clear. Christ died once for all, Romans 6:10, and no one else has to die to complete the plan of salvation or any part of it, including divine healing. The price of sin is blood, but when blood was required, it was the blood of animals and not the blood of humans. And when human blood was required, God sent his own son, who died once for all. The idea that God needs us to die for part of the plan of salvation when Jesus was declared to be the lamb slain from the foundation of the world seems to do violence to the scriptures. Jesus' disciples tried to get him to save himself from death, and Jesus said he could do that, but how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled? Thus it must be. That's Matthew 26:54. There were more than one scriptures or witnesses that ordered Jesus to his death, and until the time directed by those scriptures, Jesus did not allow himself to be put to death. You cannot convert an invitation to call for the elders into a death warrant. You just can't double that as a death warrant. We've already established that if you don't do what you can, you're charged before God by God's law, God's order. You're charged with committing what you could have prevented. So we've established already that this is murder. Now, to justify murder, you're going to have 2 witnesses here. That's God's law. So we would have to have at least 2 clear New Testament scriptures because we're dealing with New Testament divine healing. I questioned Brother Ed Wilson carefully on this. And what I was afraid of here is people are going to wait until he dies, and then they're going to say they don't believe he really agreed with this. It doesn't sound like him. And so that's why I got in touch with Brother Ed at 6 months. And then with him on the thread, with all the other 36 ministers, I said, I understand if you don't contact me, if you at least contact Brother Ed. Brother Ed's on this email thread. He says none of you, not one of you, have contacted him. That way, if they still don't contact him and then Brother Ed passes away and they claim that doesn't sound like Brother Ed, then they're just being willingly ignorant, and it's a strategy on their part. So that's boundary 4. God requires 2 or more witnesses to condemn to death. And that's the end of boundary 4.